Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I'm Megan.
And I'm Sierra, and today we're doing a sit-down video about kind of the application process of PT school. We did a whole video covering our journey when we applied, and we mentioned at the end that we wanted to do a whole video covering kind of like our stats, because that would have been really helpful, I think, when I was applying, because I was like, what should I be aiming for?
I also think that it's good to share stats and like have different references, but from personal experience, like you can go to Student Doctor Network and like there's a whole forum of like everyone sharing their stats, experiences, GPA, GRE scores, and all that stuff. So in a way, that's kind of like, this is us doing that, but also like don't feel like you have to compare every single thing on your application, or like, I just don't want this to be like a huge comparison thing, but just like a reference and resource for you guys to know where our strong points in our application were and where we think our weak points were at, what we would have done differently, anything like that.
So before we get started, I kind of want to cover like how our application process went. If you haven't watched our video, that will be linked in the information button where you can watch the whole thing in depth. But we applied to 5 schools, all in the Iowa Midwest area, because we didn't want to be far from home. And we got interview offers from all 5 schools. We declined 1 interview offer, went to 4 of the interviews, and after that we got 2 acceptances and 2 waitlists.
And then once we got one of our acceptances, we withdrew from the other 2 waitlisted programs just because we got into our top choice school, so it didn't make sense to wait for the waitlist anymore. Also, I was going to say at the end of this video, we did ask if you guys had any questions about anything in the process, and so towards the end, once we get through our stats and our applications, then we're going to go ahead and see what you guys want us to answer. So let's get started. So we do have our laptops right here, but you can't see them. So if we're looking down to tell you information, we don't have everything memorized. So that's what we'd be looking at. I guess we can go ahead and start with like the academic stuff, because I think that's what people are most interested in. So also, PTCAS, once you submit your transcript, they're going to calculate their own GPA. It shouldn't be much different from your actual GPA that your school gives you, but just keep in mind that they calculate your GPA, and then that's what all the schools you're applying to see, and not your transcript GPA. So
again, it shouldn't be like much different, just for reference. So Megan and I both had 4.0s when we applied to PT school.
We worked very hard to get those 4.0s in undergrad, and then that's what it showed up in as PTCAS. So that was,
and I don't think you can get any higher than that on PTCAS.
You can't.
So that was our GPA for reference. And then for the GRE, there's 3 sections of the GRE. So there's verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and analytical writing. So for the verbal reasoning, I scored a 156.
I scored a 157.
And then for quantitative reasoning, I scored a 158.
I scored 160.
And for the analytical writing, I scored a 4.
I also got a 4. So
and for the analytical writing, sorry. I was going to say for the analytical writing, that kind of goes in like 0.5 increments. So it's not like you can get like a 4.2. It's like 4, 4.5. I think it goes to 6.
Combined, if you can't do math in your head, I got a 317 for my total. And then if you do math,
I can't do quick math.
314.
Yeah.
So those are our kind of like just number stuff, what we look like as far as like that stuff, because I think that those are like stats that everyone wants to know about.
So I think that kind of covers our academic stats. So we can move on to our observation hours and extracurricular stuff. So I had about 220 observation hours total.
I had 246.
And I had mine split among 12 different locations.
I had my observation hours split between 8 different locations.
I think for observation hours, I was struggling with this, I think, the most, in terms of, I was like, what is a good amount of observation hours versus what's not?
Because the minimum, some schools actually don't technically have a minimum. In some schools, you don't have to technically get your hours verified, but some do. I would recommend getting all of your hours verified. But usually the minimum is just 50. You should definitely get more than 50. I think that aiming for
I think 200 was like the closest that I heard to like aim for that. Then you see a lot of people get like over 1,000, and in those cases, that's usually people that are working as rehab techs.
So don't feel bad if you're not at 1,000.
I think another great thing is to get like a wide range of observation hours. So I tried to hit almost all of the different settings that you can look at, which those are like listed on PTCAS, or you can look them up. But
like, make sure you get inpatient, make sure you get outpatient, make sure you're seeing geriatric, pediatric. If you like find one that's in a gym, then that's like kind of a different-ish setting. And so like just really try and like cover everything. So if you're even like somewhat worried that your hours might be low, then you like have kind of compensated for that with having so many different settings. The next section of PTCAS is experiences. So it's kind of broad what you can put here. They actually don't want you to put, I think, like volunteer hours that you do at a hospital, like I was going to put that here, but since that counted as my observation hours, they don't want you to put that in the same spot. So I don't have that here. So really, this is where I think this was one of my weakest areas of my application. I only wrote down that, like I put YouTube down, like employment, because you can put that down. And then for extracurricular, I put that I was in the pre-PT club. So I was like, this is a little bare.
I would agree with that too. I think that something that in hindsight, I was like, this would have really helped if I had taken some sort of leadership role, like, you know, in maybe pre-PT club, or just like gotten really involved in like some club on campus, because I felt like I didn't show that side of me where I'm like, look at me like doing things for other people. So I also just included like YouTube and pre-PT club, but just like as
and also dance marathon.
Yeah, I did dance marathon for 1 year, which is like raising money for pediatric cancer. So I was like, I just wish I would have shown more leadership qualities in an organization like larger than myself. So I think that was one of my weakest points of my application.
All right, and then a couple people asked us if there's an essay that you have to write, and the answer is yes. It's actually not a long essay. It's only like 2 pages, I think, so it's not long, but you want to make sure that you have a well-written essay so that you can, you know, feel good about it.
Yeah. The question changes, I think, on a yearly or bi-yearly basis.
Every 2 years. I think that it's roughly the same thing, except for the cycle before us. I think it was different than it usually is, but this year it kind of went back to the standard of...
It was reflect on a meaningful experience in your life and share how that experience influenced your personal growth, such as your attitudes or perceptions. So really broad, really open-ended. You could pretty much write about anything you want as long as like life-changing.
That's not going to be the prompt for the next cycle though.
So just kind of like be open-minded. Think of things in your head about like meaningful experiences. I feel like it's usually always kind of related to that. My biggest tip, and you can hire someone to edit your essay, I would really recommend that, because
I think so too. I think it's worth it.
Yeah. It was, I think, $100 for the essay, and it was well worth it because
my essay improved like just so far beyond what I thought I was going to. So if you're taking the time to write the essay, apply to all these schools, I think it's worth it to make sure that you're having someone who knows what they're talking about to edit your essays. I think that we could probably link down below the person that we did. Her name is
Jasmine Marcus.
Jasmine Marcus. So she was great. Would recommend.
She was a journalism major, and then she also applied to PT school, and she's now PT. So I feel like
best of
she's
both
got,
worlds, really.
you know, the entire ROM covered. My biggest tip is just to think of an experience that you can eventually round out how the qualities you learned from that experience would help you be a good PT, because you still want to relate it back to PT in some way.
It doesn't directly explicitly say to do that, but you're going to want to, because you're applying to PT school. They're going to want to know how that matters to PT school.
All right, so the last section of PT Cast is program materials. This is the section where it's all the different schools, if they have extra materials they want you to apply. For Iowa, which is the school that we're going to, they didn't have anything else that they wanted. They're just like, submit, and you know.
Yeah, so everything that PT Cast wanted you to submit, they were like good with that being your application, and then that was it. But many other schools will have some sort of supplemental information that they want you to submit. So it could be a question where they want you to type in a paragraph. They could have like multiple, or they could have like 2 questions where they want you to answer like somewhat longer supplemental essay type questions.
A lot of schools will ask if you have already applied to the school. So if this is your second time applying, they'll ask you, how did you improve your application this time around? So, you know, if you're applying again, maybe have to answer that.
Also, if you wanted to, if your schools do have supplemental essay questions, you can ask to get those edited too. So the person that was editing our essays, you could pay somewhat more to have her edit like supplemental essay questions and answers. So if one of your top schools had that and you wanted to make sure your answers were really good, then I would say maybe be worth it to do that too. But we just answered ours
ourselves, because I think that the only school that had like a ton of essays were just like, it was one of our last choice schools, so we're like, whatever.
Yeah.
So now we'll get into answering some questions.
All right, so one of the first questions is, what kinds of questions do they ask you in interviews? Not all schools are going to interview, but I think that 90% of them do have interviews as part of the application process. So usually how it works is you submit your application to PT Cast, and then eventually you'll start hearing back from schools if they would like to have you for an interview. And then sometimes, I guess only one of our schools that we applied to sent us kind of like, here's what we might be asking you about. So sometimes they might do that, so you have a little bit of an idea of what to prepare for, but otherwise it's completely unknown, and you just have to like try and see what you can figure out either online. You can look at Student Doctor Network, and sometimes you can ask if people have been to this interview, what questions did they ask. I think in general, a lot of it, which you need to be prepared for 100%, is going to be behavioral based questions. So being able to think back on experiences you've had, look online for different behavioral questions and see if you can come up with answers to them.
There is a specific method that you're supposed to use when answering behavioral questions. I think it's like STAR.
I'll be honest,
situation,
I didn't,
task.
maybe when I was
something.
planning out how I would answer questions, I practiced that, but when you're in an interview, it's hard to actually like think like that on the spot, but if you practice beforehand, then it helps. Some other things, you should definitely have questions where it's like, why do you want to be a PT? That should be a question that you can answer. If you were to talk about an observation experience that really stood out to you, that would be a good idea.
I also would brush up on the APTA website. That's something that I definitely would not have thought to do unless
like we were told by a school that they would be asking
about, and that was
about
our first interview.
Questions like issues in PT right now, and so making sure you actually know about the profession beforehand, which if you go on the APTA website, it's kind of confusing, not gonna lie, but try to go to like the current issues thing, read through some of those, and just see if you can make sense to the best of your ability.
Knowing what the mission statement is for the Physical Therapy Association.
Or prepping for interviews too, like know what the school you're applying to's mission statement is, and just like learn more about the school you're applying to before interviewing, so you feel like you get a good feel of like what they might ask, what's important to them.
Basically, like before each school, I'd have a whole Google Drive sheet pulled up, and I would go be like, okay, what's their mission statement? I'd copy and paste that onto the document. You don't have to memorize it word for word. You just have to know like what is their goal, you know, within the school, and like what do they want to accomplish. So also just maybe knowing like what their faculty even looks like, knowing some of their names, what their research.
So that way, once
doing,
you're in there for interview day, you kind of are like, oh, like I know this person, like their faculty,
or like if it's like the head of the department, maybe like being like, oh my god, like that's the head of the department. Like
just so you know who you're surrounded by. I think those are all good things. As far as other questions they ask, I really think, I mean, honestly, sometimes I would leave the interview and like block out like everything that happens. So I don't remember like word for word specific questions. And if you go to multiple interviews, it's all going to kind of start blending together.
I will say, before my last interview, and you had 2 interviews, we purchased literally it's a $5 like online book that someone made of just like interview questions, and I thought it was really helpful because they were questions that I hadn't really thought of, but I thought they were good questions, and you could kind of shift them to like, and then it had a lot of questions.
Also it wrote down like their answers that you might use.
So maybe we'll link that down below because I thought it was really helpful because I was really stressed out before my last interview since I had been like waitlisted twice, and this is like my last interview for my top school, so I was like, oh my god, I have to like really kill this interview. So
it ended up being like the most chill interview.
Yeah.
So it really just like, it depends so much on the school. Like some schools are going to use the interview as a time to like really kind of focus on the behavioral questions and like what can they get you to say, or some schools might be just like really wanting to get to know you as a person. So it really varies a lot, but I think that no matter what, you can like try and know all the questions in the world and you're still not going to be 100% prepared. You're going to get to an interview and you're going to have to take a minute, pause, think about what you're going to want to say, no matter how much you prepare, I think. So.
That being said, I think that preparation is totally worth it. We had our sister come over, I think twice for me, to help me run through interview questions, and I definitely like looking back at my first interview, I don't think I was ready for that interview. I think I left I was like, I don't know what just happened. So, and they do like different scenarios, so they might have a group interview, solo interview, maybe 2 faculty members.
Don't let a group interview scare you guys. I actually really liked a group interview, and so like I've done
the people in your group interview.
Yeah, I've done one-on-one, I've done 2-on-1, I've done group interview scenario, and honestly, none of them are that bad. None of them are like worse than the other, in my opinion. I promise you guys, if me and Sierra can get through interviews, like 4 of them, I promise you guys can too, because before this, I had essentially 0 interview experience. Like we've never had,
like literally 0.
Like we had never had to interview for jobs before ever. Like this was completely new for us, and so it was like, if we can do it, and even though you're going to be nervous, like I promise you guys that just take it like 1 interview at a time. And
bring some water with you if you need it.
Good idea. Try to breathe, try to calm yourselves, but make sure you like actually prepare for the interview because you only get 1 shot at each school. So yeah.
One thing that really helped me was, even though the interview day is, you know, like between 4 and, you know, 7 hours or something, I don't know. Like the whole day is not just an interview. You have to be on your best behavior and stuff, but like a lot of it's a tour, you might get lunch, and you're really only interviewing for like maybe like an hour max. So just
maybe
like
not max. Mine was like an hour-and-a-half group interview one time and a 20-minute one-on-one.
But most
that was honestly one of my best interview experiences too. So like the more time might not be bad, and that was part of a group interview, so I wasn't like
Yeah.
talking the whole
I
time.
would just say, kind of like when you're having that moment by yourself before your interview, just like take a deep breath, say, I got this, I just need to be like the best version of me for like 20 to 30 minutes probably is usually how long the interviews last. And then like once you leave, you be like, okay, we're chilling. We did it. So the next one is trying to study the GRE right now. Any tips, or do you think GRE scores are important?
I have so many mixed emotions about the GRE and how I feel like I should tell you guys to go about doing it and taking it. I will say, so me and Sierra took it in May, like the summer before we were applying to grad school. I would recommend taking it sooner if you can, even though it's easy to push off. We did fine, but if you have to take it again, you don't want to cut it too close to the time of like where you're applying. So I would take it sooner, like maybe we should have taken it in winter break, like the December
I'd say that's what's
before.
recommended.
But you don't have to take it too early. If you want to, you can, because you know your score is going to be good for like however long. If you're in undergrad, like you could take it whenever. Some people need to study more than others, and I think it really depends on how well you do on standardized tests. I think the best thing you can do to gauge how well you're going to do is take practice tests, because other than that,
so we used Kaplan. I think Kaplan's the one that makes the GRE, so I would just recommend studying with their supplies because they know it's gonna be on the exam. But what we did is we used like an online study tool. It thinks that you bought the book if you go to like a campus bookstore and you find like their GRE study tools. You open up the book, and if you're like on your phone trying to sign up, it'll say like, what's the second word on page 322, and then you can just flip to the book, say what the word is, and then it thinks
it
that
gives
you
you
bought
access
it. So,
to all of the study stuff.
little life hack for you.
I think that like I would like to tell you, oh, study a lot because then you'll get like a better score. But I'll be honest, after not studying that much, I kind of did the same as I did on the practice exams. Like I studied a little bit, but it's hard for me to fathom how studying more for a test like the GRE is going to help you like that much unless you put in like an ungodly amount of hours. Like if you're just kind of like, should I study for like 3 weeks versus 1 week? I don't know, like if it's gonna make that much of a difference. Like maybe if you're studying, like should I study for 1 week versus 3 months? Maybe that's going to make a difference, but I was not the kind of person that saw myself studying for 3 months, honestly.
Between like, total we probably studied for like a week. I would say that they probably put more weight on your GRE if you have a lower GPA. So if you have like a really good GRE score, they can say, oh, you know, if you apply yourself, then you can actually do really well. But if you have a good GPA, which we did, then they probably don't care about the GRE as much, in my opinion.
Also, I was gonna say most schools have their GRE, like the previous class that came in, what their GRE results were for each category. So that way you have like a good idea of what you should be aiming for. Try to aim above average, because then above average is good. That means that, you know, you were mostly higher.
I was going for above average and no higher. Like I didn't care to do absolutely amazing. I've heard that like getting a total combined score of like 300 is, you know, pretty decent. So I don't know. Maybe aim for that. I will say,
because a lot of times people are like, what's on the GRE? I think that's probably something that someone asked in here. And
there's a math section. And the math, it's like good and bad. It's like, I don't know.
There's some things where it's like, what number, like what value is bigger, but it's like some like algebraic abstract value. It's not just like 24 is greater than 6. It's like, is this number bigger or is this number bigger?
Or it's like, could it be bigger? Because it's like an X a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it's like,
It's kind of similar to the ACT. Like I think that the math section's closer to the math section of the ACT than like the vocab or English writing section.
Guys, I don't know what it was called, qualitative section was like the English reading. It's really freaking hard.
Yeah.
And almost makes no sense.
I don't know how you're supposed to get better at it by studying for it, because the vocab stuff are like words you've never heard of. There's up to 3,000 words that the GRE might use. There's no point, there's no way I was going to study all of those words. So it's kind of like, it's a lot of guessing where you can kind of use like your best guess, but it's also like, I don't know.
And for like the analytical writing, there's 2 short essays that you have to write. One is analyze an argument, and then the other one is create an argument, I think.
I'll be honest, I didn't study for that at all. Except
I just felt like I was a decent writer and could like think off the top of my head. And also, there's not really any way to gauge how well you're doing, because you have to like submit.
You'd have to pay for your written stuff to get graded, and we never did that. So just, honestly, I'm kind of surprised I did okay, because I didn't really know what I was supposed to do for the writing section.
Yeah,
but
neither.
You can wing it, apparently. All right, so the next thing is about job shadowing. Once you start job shadowing, how do you find people to job shadow? So me and Sierra started job shadowing in high school. I think that's a really good time to start seeing if you're interested in PT. Like maybe you're interested, but then if you job shadow a little bit and you find out maybe you aren't into it that much, then maybe you know like not to keep going with it. Or you could not give up right away, go try a different setting, and maybe you're like, oh, I like this, because you're going to have settings where you job shadow and you like really like something, and then some places where you're like, this isn't that interesting. So don't give up if you go to one place and you don't love it. High school's good, and people like PTs aren't going to mind if you're in high school and you want to ask to job shadow. I personally just reached out to all the people that I job shadowed through email.
I think that we took like a specific high school course where it's like we literally had to email people to job shadow. It was like I don't know what the course was called. School to work esque, I guess. So that's like what, how we learned how to start job shadowing, and then we just carry that to be like, oh, we just email people and then let you job shadow. When it gets to hospitals and more like established places, then it's probably like more hoops to jump through.
It's like start with emailing someone, because usually you can find an email like to start. They might give you
is easiest.
They might give you another email to email in a hospital and say like, oh, this is our person that handles people that want to job shadow. And if it's inpatient, then you have to make sure you're up to date on vaccinations or TB tests and stuff. So if you don't have that, then you have to like go through the extra effort of getting that stuff done.
It's not hard though.
It's not hard, but just like be aware of it. If you are trying to like, if you're pushing off inpatient to like the last thing you're job shadowing, then it's going to be like more time if you don't get on it right away. And that's also like you're going to be more likely limited in your hours. Another way to get good inpatient hours is if you go to a skilled nursing facility, because it's not a hospital, but it's much easier to, in my experience anyways, to shadow for a longer period of time than you're able to in a hospital.
I would say like do not be afraid to reach out to people. I have had no one ever say like, no, you can't job shadow. I have had like job shadow things fall through just because maybe the timing doesn't work out. I've had people like randomly stop responding to me, so I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just go somewhere else. But like I've never had someone flat out say like, no, you can't job shadow. I've always had someone try to be like, oh, try this email, or just like say, yeah, sure, when you want to come in.
You could also call if you're comfortable doing that. I just feel like calling is like, unless they have someone at the front desk, like I feel like email's easier to get things coordinated. Like I don't know exactly what my schedule is, so I personally like emailing the best, but you can call. Some things on websites have like a contact thing for observation hours, so just try and like do all the research if you find a place you're interested in job shadowing, and either look for an email or something on their website.
If you're curious as to kind of how we organize getting our observation hours done,
because you have to keep track of them.
Yeah. One, make an Excel sheet or like a Google Docs spreadsheet and organize the amount of hours you spent at a place, when you shadowed them, who you shadowed, maybe keep track of emails.
Yeah.
You want to keep this all organized so that when you are applying to PT school, you can email them to verify your hours.
And then they will hopefully remember you.
Yeah.
Even like from high school, like we were getting our observation hours verified. I was like, I hope they remember me and like don't question my hours to verify. But
they remember that.
They remembered / like I think
or they
just
acted
trust
like they
that.
did.
They must have seen you at some point. But keep the emails so that you know where like who you should be contacting like 3 years later when you're actually applying, because even if you start in high school, you have to like make the hours count. If you're actually job shadowing, there's no point in really doing it if you're not going to be able to verify them later.
So we started job shadowing fall semester of our senior year of high school, just because that's when our like school to work type of class was.
You don't have to start job shadowing that soon, but also the earlier the better.
We also graduated a year early, so it just made more sense to kind of like start 4 years before we were planning on applying. So like take that into account. And then I didn't start shadowing again until the like spring break of my freshman year of college, and that's the only time I shadowed during my freshman year.
I job shadowed again my winter break of my senior year, or of my freshman year of college, and then I didn't job shadow again until summer.
And then summer was a huge thing for us because
I'd highly recommend doing something like this.
We were like, okay, we're gonna try and get in a ton of hours this summer because we didn't love just like spending a ton of time like jumping around during the school year to be like, I'm gonna shadow here, here, and here.
It works good during the school year when you only have short periods of time to job shadow, and if you're not getting like a rehab tech position, but we knew that we wanted to have like, if you want to get a PT recommendation letter, then you're going to want to have a place that you've been at for a long period of time so the PT actually knows you and can write a good letter of recommendation, because you're going to need references for PT school, so makes sense.
So we started shadowing 3 times a week I started doing 4 hours just because I started a little bit later.
3.5 hours.
So I was getting in about 12 hours a week for like the entire summer.
It was still nice and flexible. Obviously, like you're just there volunteering and job shadowing, so like it's not, none of the places that I have been at have been like super strict or anything. It's like I went on vacation and like it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Because you would just tell them and be like, I'm not going to be in next week. So it was really good. I'd recommend doing it.
Obviously, if you need a job, work as a rehab tech and you'll, get paid also, which is great, but we didn't need to get paid because we have YouTube, so we were just
And it also makes it easier. Like, then you have more options because people can't always afford to say, like, yes, we can take you on as a rehab tech and pay you. So if you're going to do it for free, then they're more likely to be like, okay, yeah, we don't have a reason to say no. You can't come job shadow. Technically, also, I job shadowed twice a week my spring semester, my freshman year of college, because I got a position for volunteering at the hospital that was in the rehab unit, so that counted for hours as well.
I was volunteering that semester, but not in a PT unit because I couldn't get into a PT unit, so I didn't start volunteering in a PT unit until the fall semester of my sophomore year.
And then I also did that.
We see a lot of people asking about what they should do in high school to maybe prep for college classes related to what you're gonna have to learn for PT, or just like how to get involved in knowing if you want to do PT. So I'd say job shadowing is probably the biggest thing.
Well, I think that I love seeing people that are in high school that like are interested in PT and like want to know what can they do to like help them feel the most prepared, because that's where me and Sierra like first became interested. So like that's exactly when we started too. But I also think you should be aware and realize that like you have to make sure you know the field and like only keep getting yourself like more involved with it to know you actually want to keep doing it, because maybe you decide you don't want to do it and then that's totally okay. You just want to know sooner rather than later. So job shadowing is great. If you can do a school to work thing, that's even better. I also think that make sure in high school you enjoy taking science classes, because you're going to have a lot of science classes you have to take. And if you're realizing now in high school that you hate science classes,
maybe
I just think that in college you're going to realize you don't think you can get through the classes.
Because not only do you have to take them, but you have to do decently well in most, if not all of them.
Yeah, so you could also take AP credits if you want. Me and Sierra didn't take any AP credits that counted towards our prereqs, but if you're like trying to have like a good use of your time, you could do that. I honestly, I'm pretty sure AP credits count for prereqs, but you didn't hear it from me because I'm not 100%
We did not
sure.
take any AP classes in high school that we used as prereqs for applying. But I'm pretty sure you can, just don't take it from me.
I also think, freshman year of high school is freshman year of college is a good time to start looking at programs you might want to apply to. Maybe sophomore year too, because me and Sierra are graduating a year early, so freshman year it made sense for us to do that. But different programs might have different prereqs. They're mostly the same. Like, you're going to have to take physics, you're going to have to take chemistry, biology, psychology, statistics, and then some schools might require like some more biology
maybe
or
medical
other
terminology.
stuff. So it's going to be a lot of the same core classes, but look at different tuition costs, look at locations you might want to go to, and like have those in mind so that when you're planning out your classes, you don't realize you're missing a prereq and you can't apply at all to a program. So you have to make sure you're staying on top of stuff like that.
All right, so someone else asked, when should you start applying? And the best answer is right when the application cycle opens.
Well, hold on. It depends. I think like also in a broader sense. Some people choose to take a gap year.
Yeah.
Some people, if you don't want to take a gap year, you have to apply going into your senior year of college, because then the whole application process is like through the fall into the spring, and then you're going to start in the summer or fall that next year. But if you choose to take a gap year, then you won't apply until the summer after you graduate college. It just depends on what you want to do. Some people choose to like take that gap year so that they can save money for tuition, because you're not going to be able to work most likely during grad school.
Or some people might take time off and even do like a master's. This is like a really extreme route. I don't know if I would do this, but if they have a bad GPA, they'll take a master's to improve their GPA and then maybe go to PT school.
That's a lot of
Seems
school.
like a lot of work for me, but
it's an option.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like you were saying, you just apply as soon as possible.
They do say like the earlier you apply, the better, because a lot of schools just will be like, okay, take you in. Oh, we filled our like all of our interview slots, so like we're not looking at any more applications. So you want to get your application in early
as soon as
so
you
they
can.
look at it
and like have it like with everything completed. So like references, verified hours, all that. Get all of that completed as soon as possible.
Someone else also asked if you could apply to PT school and graduate early, and yes, you can, because that's what we're doing. I think it's just mostly about staying on top of everything. I feel like just looking back at the classes that we've taken, I've taken a lot of my gen eds throughout the summer, or like I got credit for them in high school, and then I was like always pretty much taking classes that I had to take. I didn't take a lot of gen eds just like in college, if that makes sense.
Also, you want to kind of be aware of taking your prereqs first and focusing on getting those done if you're graduating early, because you're going to want to be able to apply with, like when you're applying, you're not going to have all your prereqs done most likely, but you're going to want to have like
Most
75, 85% of them done, so that they have a good idea of what you're going to end up finishing off your senior year with as far as grades. And so instead of taking all of our gen eds first, like we decided to focus on taking anatomy, physiology. I guess we didn't even mention those as prereqs, but like, yeah, those are prereqs. Biology, chemistry, physics, like getting those done
Kind of
first, or at
front-loading
least
everything.
like doing that. Whereas now the only things we had to do our senior year was our second physics class, our abnormal psych class, and then statistics. We're finishing off. So that's, I think, what I'd recommend, just kind of making sure that not only are you going to, like, we know we're going to get all of our classes done, but they want to see the prereq stuff done first, and like they don't care about the gen eds that you have to do later. So do that.
I'd say we just like couldn't fill our schedule with like a ton of fluff like a lot of people do if they don't really have a plan. It was like, okay, here's like what we have to do this semester, and like also just keeping track of like the prereqs for when you're in undergrad. Like I have to get chemistry done before I can take anatomy, like that kind of thing.
So we had like, since our freshman year of college, like we had tentative schedules of like when we plan on taking everything, just because
And it changes.
made us like feel the most comfortable, and like at least knowing that we could get it all fit in.
Yeah.
So that we
I
knew
can't
that we
tell
could
you how many
graduate early.
times we were like look at stuff and be like, wait, can we still graduate early? There's a lot of like second guessing, but you know,
Here we are.
we're doing it. All right, so someone asked, what do you wear to interviews? And I think that this is a really good question to ask because I genuinely didn't know what to wear to an interview either, and the answer is a suit. Everyone wears a suit. I think that
Every
guys
single
like don't
person.
really have to think about it, and they're like, okay, nice occasion, I'm gonna wear a suit. But when you're a female, you're like, do I just dress like nice? Do I dress business casual?
Some
What do you
girls
do?
wear like, most girls, like 99% are going to wear a pantsuit. Some girls choose to wear like a skirt, suit, totally fine, doesn't matter. Some girls wear heels. Most girls wear flats just because no one wants to fall. Then like wear a nice blouse, have a blazer on, because at first we weren't sure if everyone was going to be wearing a blazer. Wear a blazer. I promise you're not going to regret wearing a blazer. Get a nice fitted one. We got ours from Express. They're expensive. They're very expensive. So you don't have to get them from Express, but we really like the ones that we got. And then we just got dress pants from Target.
Blouses from Target.
Shoes from Target. And then it helps if you have like a, a tote bag, just because you're going to have like some stuff to carry around with you. So I think that works really well as far as like carrying your stuff around and having it look kind of professional. And
I cannot tell you though, I was about to like not wear a blazer to my first interview. I was like, I'll just wear kind of like a nice blouse and some like slacks and stuff. And I am very glad that I showed up with a blazer on, because everyone else was wearing a blazer and I did not want to be like, oh my god, I'm not wearing, like I'm the only one that's not wearing a blazer. That would have been added stress.
I think also just black is a good option. Like you could, I'm not saying they would care if you wear colors, they probably don't care at all, but I think black is just a solid choice. Don't go too crazy. All right, last question we're going to talk about is, do schools have any sort of preference as far as like what you should major in, or whether they care if you went to undergrad there or anything like that? Short answer is that schools don't typically, well, they're not going to have a preference for what you major in.
They don't
care.
And I've seen a lot of people be like, well, they probably like do like prefer people with like, you know, human phys or like kinesiology degrees.
They don't. Just if you get the prereqs done and do well in them, that's all they care about. You could be whatever major you want. It's easier to get all the prereqs in and get an undergrad degree if you just combine them. But you certainly don't have to, and some people choose not to, just up to you.
So we have human physiology degrees, so it's just like the anatomy and physiology is already included in what we need to graduate, whereas you could like do business as your degree, but you just have to
like you have to take those classes separately still.
Yeah, so it just might take longer.
Theoretically. I don't know though, but I think it would. But also like some people might be like, well, what are you going to do with a human phys degree if you were to not get into grad school? Whereas like if you were to have a different degree, you can like probably do other stuff with it. But I went into it being like, well, if I'm doing this, I'm going to get into PT school somehow. So they don't care. The other thing is, do schools care if you went to undergrad at their school? No, they don't. It doesn't matter. Some schools might say that they have an in-state preference, especially if they're a public university, because they're going to be bringing people in, and like they're hoping. How'd you word this? Because you worded it better than I did.
They're hoping to populate their state with PTs. Is how I think of it.
And like you're going to have to take a state licensure exam. So, you know, we're going to Iowa. They want to take people in from Iowa that they're going to stay in Iowa and that they're teaching like Iowa PTs. But if you're going to a private school, like they're not going to care at all because they're private institution.
Schools do not care.
And so, you know, Creighton was one of the schools we interviewed at. They have no in-state preference. But Iowa says they have in-state preference just a little bit, but they don't say they have any preference for undergrads that go to Iowa. So if that helps out at all. Otherwise, I think that we covered most of the questions you guys asked. If you do have any other questions, you can leave them down below and we'll try to answer them. Hopefully this was helpful, because just another resource for you guys. If you want to check out other resources, I think that Student Doctor Network is a really good place.
Don't get too deep in that, though.
You can lose yourself in it a little bit. It's nerve-wracking, but try to like get information, but not just like drown yourself in it, if that makes sense.
Do not compare yourself to a ton of other people, because it gets really easy to be like, oh my god, you know, maybe they're not getting accepted and they have better stats than me. Like, how am I going to get accepted? Like,
everyone has good and bad parts of the application, and also like some people interview really well, and some people, like me, probably don't interview like the best or like as well as they wish they could. So just do your best to prepare for yourself and for your interviews, and yeah.
If this is your first time seeing a video of ours and you are looking to go into PT, we'll be posting a lot more PT content, so make sure you subscribe down below. We'll just post we post vlogs and stuff, like it's pretty chill over here, so.
Also, we have a podcast, it's called According To, featuring both of us, and you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, so you should search it and subscribe and start listening to it.
You can also follow our Instagrams, they'll be linked above, and I think that pretty much covers it. So
we'll see you guys in our next video. Bye!